You know, I want to get back to this thing about the way they talk about us and the way we talk about them. But we have Michael Doran on the phone, and I want to talk to him about the Khashoggi thing, because one of the things they're doing with Trump is blaming him for the killing of Khashoggi. He speaks nastily about reporters, and therefore the fact that a guy who writes columns for the Washington Post was murdered by the Saudis is somehow Trump's fault. Michael Doran is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, specializes in Middle East security issues. He was part of the George W. Bush administration, serving in the White House as a senior director in the National Security Council. Wrote a great piece in the New York Post this weekend. I think it was Friday. How you doing, Mike? It's good to see you.
Great. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Let's start with this, because we're hearing a lot of stuff from both sides. Who was Khashoggi exactly? Where do we place him on the spectrum of idea people?
Well, the news media wants to just say he's a journalist and a dissident democracy advocate.
Right.
And there's some truth to that, but it's a half truth. The fact of the matter is he's first and foremost a regime insider. He was very close for many years to Prince Turki Al Faisal, who was the head of intelligence for a very long time. Later, he was connected to Al Walid. You know Al Walid; he's one of the richest guys in the world. So we're not talking about a guy who's simply a man of ideas. To the extent that he has a commitment to ideas, he's in the mold of the Muslim Brotherhood. He's an Islamist. When he's talking to his American colleagues, allies, he can say, I want to open up the Arab regimes so that the voices of the people can be heard, and that's to open it up for political Islam. That's
yeah.
And when Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whom they call MBS, this is the crown prince, he's now the strong man in Saudi Arabia, he moved against political Islam, and Khashoggi went into exile and came to the United States, and that's who he is.
So we're dealing with the usual thing that we either have to back the strong men or we have to back this murderous Islamist philosophy. I mean, is that pretty much where we're stuck?
I'm a little bit of a squish. I don't want to lose all of your viewers here. I'm a little bit of I'm a little bit of a squish on the Islamists of the Khashoggi orientation. If the Middle East ever did democratize, the Arab world did democratize, then political Islam of one flavor or another is going to be part of the bargain. I mean,
Okay.
that's just I think that's a fact of life. But we do, I think, have really pretty stark choices, and we got a lot from MBS that we were very happy with. Women driving, the new relationship with Israel, his outreach to the Iraqi government, which is a Shiite government, and most important of all, I think, from strategic point of view, is that he shifted Saudi policy to get it 100% behind Trump's policy in Syria, which led to a significant conflict then between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, because Turkey doesn't like our policy there.
So why did MBS have to kill? It seems pretty obvious that he killed this guy. Why did he have to kill him?
Well, there's the threat for MBS is kind of a four-part threat. He represents Islamism that he's moved against. He represents the Qatari-Turkish axis, and you remember that MBS also broke very dramatically with Qatar and accused them of actually plotting assassinations and getting involved in the internal affairs of Saudi Arabia. And then he also has, like I said, these connections to the regime, to the royal family opposition to the prince. So he's sort of, I would say, the ideological face of the royal opposition to MBS. And then to make it worse, he got a perch in Washington, D.C., where he started working with the American elite critics of MBS. These are the former Obama people who want to move toward Iran and away from Saudi Arabia. And he was undermining, I mean, to put it simply, he was undermining MBS in Washington, where it matters most.
So is it fair to say that some of the voices calling for us to essentially blow up our relationship with Saudi Arabia are ex-Obama people who want to bring back this Iran elite alliance, which seems, correct me if I'm wrong, the Iran alliance seemed like a crazy idea to me. I mean, it seemed like an idea on paper. I could understand the Shia, divide and all this, but it just seemed like nuts to ally ourselves with them.
It's strategic genius. Like if you put all of the coordinates into a computer, like computer dating, they decide, oh yeah, Iran, that's the country that we're going to align with. That's the way I read it. And now one has to admit that there is, I think, a level of genuine outrage. And
Sure.
obviously, what MBS did was crude and thuggish and immoral, and you can add whatever adjective you want on there. And there are, I think, people in Congress like Lindsey Graham who actually feel that they have been led down the garden path a little bit because they've been defending him against his critics, and he turned around and behaved like this. But if you want to ask why is the media 24/7 talking about this, like this is the biggest issue in the world? I mean, we've got 1 million people in concentration camps, and Uyghurs in concentration camps in China, and we don't hear a word about it. And this one guy is 24/7. That's, I think, two things. One, they feel that they can make the direct connection between the White House and the palace in Riyadh, and so they can lay it on Trump's doorstep. And then number two, exactly what you said, this is an effort to justify and rehabilitate the Obama foreign policy.
Okay, that's a really good point. My last question. You do. It's kind of like the Maltese Falcon. When a guy gets killed, you have to do something about it. What should Trump do? What's his best move here?
Well, there has to be a public face. I mean, the United States cannot be so closely tied to a country like Saudi Arabia and have behavior like this. And if nothing else, forget about the morality for a second. I mean, it's a tremendous embarrassment to the president right before the midterm elections. I mean, it's the old thing about it's worse than a crime. It's a blunder. Obviously, obviously it's both. But for me, I mean, I have a very simple view of these things and of international relations, and that the first question you have to ask is, who are your friends and who are your enemies? And you don't treat your friends the way you treat your enemies. And so it's like a family member. If a family member does something bad, you take him, you shut the door, and behind closed doors, you give them a very strong talking to. But you don't go undermining them in public because they are your family.
Right.
And if you undermine them, you're undermining yourself. Now, look, we have to ask ourselves in this region, we have to grim up. We have to look at how many $1 trillion did we spend in Iraq. And after all of that, we do not have a proxy in Iraq. Iraq belongs as much to Iran now as it does to the United States. Vladimir Putin spent a fraction of that in Syria, and Vladimir Putin has a proxy on the ground. And Vladimir Putin is the guy that's dictating what happens according to his lights, much more than we are.
Yeah.
And that's because he understands in his fingertips this very basic logic that you protect your friends and you punish your enemies. Once you do that, then your morals and everything else, then they can come into play. But if your friends don't trust you, or if we're going to treat our friends worse than we treat our enemies, our influence is going to dissipate. And for good and for, I mean, our good influence, our values influence is going to dissipate as well. I just think it's as simple as could be.
It's so simple. I was just going to say it's so simple when you have a little common sense. Michael Doran, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. The piece in the New York Post is called "Why the Saudis Despised Jamal Khashoggi." Thanks a lot, Mike. That was really clarifying. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too.